Well, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Bill Amaralt, and I want to welcome you again to Career Clarity and Purpose. In this live and recorded event today, my panel of 14 experts will reveal their strategies to provide career clarity aligned with your true purpose. Was your career and life impacted by COVID? Were you downsized, right-sized, reorged, let go, or otherwise separated? For what it's worth, I've experienced all of those, some of them more than once. Or maybe you were part of the Great Resignation, and you realized or consciously decided that something else might be better for you. Well, my guest here at this time is Donna Cornelius, and she is helping business leaders transform who they are and build strong businesses from the ground up. She's had extensive experience as both a fractional and a full-time CEO, COO, and VP of marketing, and she provides all kinds of wealthy, wisdom-filled perspective to what this conversation will be. So I just want to say welcome, Donna, and thanks again for taking the time today.
And thank you for having me. It's a pleasure and an honor to be here.
Good. Okay, so let's go right to it. You've had a number of different positions in your career. In fact, you once said to me that your resume is 4 pages and it can't be any less than that. I would beg to differ. We'll work on it at some point. But how did those different career moves support you in terms of doing what you're doing right now? And I know you've mentored lots and lots of people through the years as well, and we'll get into that a little later, but just how your different career moves supported each other and created the circumstance that you find yourself in right now.
You know, they say hindsight's 20/20. And when I look back at my career and all of the places that I've been and all of the things that I've done, I used to feel bad because I felt like I was a jack of all trades and a master of none. And, I'm a faith person. And, God whispered to me and said, I made you that way. And it's because every single thing I've done, from joining a theater company out of high school and learning to speak, learning to be in front of others, learning to work with different industries, to, what I did in college, to having my own marketing and content management company for 14 years, to working with large businesses, small businesses, medium-sized businesses, and then stepping in and building a company that I ran for 8 years. Mm-hmm. All of those things have led me to this point. And as I've decided what I wanted to be, and I always joke, what I want to be, what do you want to be when you grow up? What I wanted to be was really to get to this place in my life where I had freedom of time, freedom of money, and really was able to work in supporting people within my, what Gay Hendricks calls your zone of genius.
Yes.
And for me, that is from a vision, mine is a visionary perspective. And so I know how to build things and how to build those. And I'm an analyzer enough to be able to take those pieces and build a strong foundation for businesses, which is what I am doing now. I retired as a CEO in July, although I did not retire from my career. And I stepped into now working with 2 businesses. One's going to be the largest thing that I've probably ever built in the energy space. And again, all of those things have led me into different industries. I've not worked in the energy space before, but how you build that business, how you build that foundation, all of these jobs that I've had, all of these careers have really developed who I am and what my knowledge base is. And that's led me to this place where I can choose to work with whom I want to work with and help them in ways that I know is my knowledge experience, where I'm the subject matter expert and able to support businesses in that way. And honestly, I feel like I'm now probably in my dream job, and I know it's not ending because there will be more. And the other side of that is because I've worked with so many different people. You mentioned mentoring. I'm able to, work with executives and really give them a perspective from who they are. I'm always a firm believer, and it doesn't matter what you do, it really matters who you are. And when you understand who you are, and Bill and you and I have been through leadership training and the emotional intelligence work, that has really shifted how I've done things drastically in the last 3 years. And when it comes to relating and how I manage myself in business, how I manage myself in life, and who I am, because it's really, I will always say it doesn't matter what you do, it matters who you are in the process.
And how you show up. I mean, one of the things you mentioned about building the business, and certainly the companies that you've worked with up to this point and the one you're working on now, a big part of that is building the organization to sustain the business as it grows, correct? And just speak into that if you would.
So yeah, building the business. Yeah, so the last company that I built, I was hired by a university and they said, hey, they literally handed me a piece of paper with not even a real idea concept behind it and said, can you build this? And, of course we all say, sure, we can, not a problem. So, and I started to build it and I circled myself with other people. There were 2 other universities that received the same grant. And I said, so, I built a roundtable and I gathered that knowledge around me. And then I also had a task force, which became my board of executives of who would be our end users. Mm-hmm. So these are large multi-million and billion-dollar businesses in this area because it's a regionally based business, that would end up using the services that we were providing. And we built that out, and we built it out in a way to build sustainability, by getting commitments. We had 3-year commitments up front. And it was not, like anything in business, it's not easy. And yet we scaled and we scaled and we grew staff, we grew services based on the needs. Mm-hmm. And in building that sustainability, I was able, when I walked away this year, and I say this not tooting my own horn, but to say, acknowledge yourself for what you created. Sure. We hit 104% of our referral revenue from last year by July of this year. And so when you build sustainability, I'd also doubled my budget this year from the previous year. Mm-hmm. And my board was like, are you sure? And I'm the eternal optimist. I'm like, absolutely, everything is possible. So as I looked at that, and we had a grant that we had received as well from the state, specifically around a certain career type. Mm-hmm. And so we just kept putting all the people in places and the pieces in places to broaden the network, to broaden the exposure. And that itself also built sustainability into the organization and the company that is now currently running and under the leadership of a phenomenal person who will take it to the next level as well.
Well, as you're saying this, I have to acknowledge you for one thing you said kind of at the very beginning of the story, which was, I got the piece of paper with not a clear description of what it is. And then the kind of the first thing you did was assemble the 3 universities together to kind of figure it out. So you readily admitted that you didn't know what you didn't know, and assembled a team that certainly, you had some obviously contribution to that, but assembled a team that could fill in all the gaps. And then when you identified the gaps, you filled them in again with other staff. Is that accurate in terms of how you put that together?
It is. Well, we were the other 2 universities, and one doesn't even exist anymore, and the other one's only within a university. We actually came out and we were our own standalone organization when we left the university. So we did handle it very differently. We all took, it's the basic building of the services, the concept, the foundation of the business. Mm-hmm. And I had a different set of experience than they had. So us working together and brainstorming, again, if you've ever read the book, From Good to Great. Yes. You don't do this by yourself. Even if you're out looking for a job, you don't do this by yourself. You leverage your network, you leverage the people that you leverage your knowledge, you get feedback from other people. And so that is how you build a business. Like if you're building, you want to do it with other people. It's very, very difficult to do it on your own. And again, I know what my strengths are. I know where I work best. And then I bring in the people that can do other things better than me. So,
good book by Jim Collins, and I forget his co-author there, but it's bright red. It's still in my bookshelf, and I'm not going to find it now, but anyway, but yes, a very, very good book. Came out in the early 2000s, and mm-hmm. It was required reading with the company that I worked with at the time. You also, you talked about your different career transitions and how that's built upon, how those have built upon themselves to create the situation where you're in right now, or that you've created. And you also talk about mentoring. I know you're a certified faith-based mentor and have put a lot of energy into that through the years. How have you worked with others when they're in a period of transition, or in a period of, hey, I've been doing this for 20 years, but I don't think I want to do it anymore? Or I don't know what I'm called to do, or, and depending on who you're speaking with, what's the universe telling me? What's God telling me? Whatever it is, how have you worked both yourself and with others through those conversations? And I know you've had lots of them.
Yeah, so I limit my mentoring right now just because I am building 2 companies, but what I do with the ones that it comes back to who you are. It really comes back to who you are. So I just, and I'm going to just jump ahead on my freebie because it's about your personal mission statement. I just did a mission statement workshop for people they have careers and they're also entrepreneurs. When you operate from who you are, then you have clarity in your vision of what it is that you want to create. You will always step out. So I've spent a year, she thought she was hiring me to help her launch a new business coaching. She is an excellent entrepreneur. She's had a successful business in another industry for many, many years. And now she wants to launch into something new. And again, back to your point of you don't know what you don't know and how to move through that. I come in really, and first thing is, who are you? What are the blocks that you have? What are your limiting beliefs? What are the things that you think about yourself? How do you see yourself? Because especially if you're getting out, if you're going to be a coach and you're going to get in front of people, how you see yourself is how they're going to see you.
Yes.
And so when you want to show up as a confident, powerful, so for me, a confident, powerful, caring, connected woman, then that's who I get to be. And if I don't know that, if I don't see that in myself, no one else is ever going to see that in me either. And so it's really working on those mindset shifts. It's digging into the things that are holding you back. And sometimes it gets uncomfortable. And guess what? Life is uncomfortable. And we get to go there because in the uncomfortable is where things grow. And where you grow. I don't care if you're in the business world, if you're in the coaching world, or if you're just trying to figure out life on your own. Get a real perspective on who you are, what you want to create, and then make the mindset shifts, the word shifts. I do a signature talk called TWA, Destination Abundance, and it's all about TWA's thoughts, words, actions, because how you think is how you speak is how you act. And how you think about yourself is really going to determine the direction and the path that you take and how you get there.
And as long as TWA isn't the defunct airline, then we're all good. So
absolutely, this one's still flying.
Yeah, that's right, exactly. So, I'm going to detour just a little bit, but allow you to say, the leadership emotional intelligence group that you've been working with, that both of us have worked with, and that you've coached in, is just put their name out on the table, and then we can just, if there's another conversation that people want to have about it at another point, we can certainly do that offline. But for me, it connected all the dots. I've been in corporate trainings, faith-based trainings, men's retreats, then a lot of quote unquote self-help stuff, some going back to the 80s when I was only 10. But this really connected all the dots for me. And go ahead, I'll let you do the
so there are multiple centers. I started in one in San Diego, and the one that Bill and I just recently came out of, I guess, Bill, you're still involved with it, is Next Level Leadership. But when you think about emotional intelligence, how you show up at work every single day is you don't show up as, okay, I'm working on a marketing plan today, or I'm executing a spreadsheet today. You show up as who you are. And this work allows you to really tap into who you are and gives you the tools that when you come up against a frustrating situation or a really big project, you don't get into overwhelm. You don't get stressed. I probably have more contentment and joy in my life now since doing this work, and I started 3 years ago, than I've ever had in my life. And I am a believer, and I knew all was out there, but it gave me the tools to back up what I already knew and apply it in a daily way. And it gets to be practical. Life is practical. So we get to take these pieces of what we learn of who we are, and then it takes it and transforms you into a leader that comes from a very, very different perspective. One of the trainers I had was Lisa Kalman, and she wrote a book, said it's not how you see, it's not the problem, it's how you see the problem.
Mm-hmm.
And so you come from a different lens, because maybe the boss who's a little bit difficult at work, or, you know, even if you're in the interviewing process and you're looking for a career change, you know, you're going to be up against recruiter after recruiter after recruiter.
Mm-hmm.
When you look at the processes and what you're up against each day, you say, okay, this is the event that happened to me. This is what's happening. Now let me take a step back. This is who I am and what I want to create in this situation. This is very powerful if you want to get a job.
Mm-hmm.
I set an intention every single day. I know who I am. I state who I am. All of those leaders, including Tony Robbins, that talks about the I am statements, those are super powerful statements.
Big.
Every single morning,
Yep.
I say who I am, what my intention is, and who it's going to take to create that. When I know I'm going into a difficult meeting, or I'm going into a sales call that, you know, if I go in questioning, then it's not going to go. If I go in with the difficult conversation and say, okay, I'm choosing to be peaceful, I'm choosing to be calm and clear and direct, that's exactly what I create in the day and when I get to the other side. Because let's face it, life is difficult sometimes, and that's okay. Again, that's how we grow, and that's where we grow. So we're either going to shrink back and say, I'm not good enough, I can't do this, this is too hard, or we're going to come in strength and power and boldness and courage and say, this is what I'm creating out of this meeting, out of this conversation. And I guarantee you, if you choose to say that, set your intention, choose who you're going to be to create that, you will create that every single time.
Even if you only have the conversation with your dog in the morning, you'll hear it yourself, and it'll have an impact. And 100% on the I am statements. And it's amazing to me how many people, you know, cut themselves out at the knees just by saying, oh, I suck at this, I'm not good, and I used to be like the biggest example of that. I mean, I played sports from the time I was like 7 and was still playing in a competitive men's basketball league until COVID. And I was always the smallest guy, or one of the smallest guys on the team. So I always thought I had to be really focused and intentional. And I'd go into slumps. And I played baseball until I was in my mid 30s. You know, high school, college, semi-pro. I'd go into these slumps because I would, you know, a good pitch and I'd hit a pop-up or something, I'd get mad, and then I get mad again. And I said, well, wait a minute, you can't do that. You have to take the downside of whatever event it is and minimize it. So now I give myself 3 seconds. If I'm playing golf and I hit one in the woods, I get 3 seconds to vent, and then I stop. And that has been a huge advantage, because it doesn't then get into your cells. It doesn't then become part of your mindset about, okay, you hit a bad shot, that doesn't mean you're bad. Or
Right.
you didn't conduct this meeting in the right way, that doesn't mean you're a poor salesperson or a businessman or whatever. The mindset is incredibly important related to that. And it was something I wish I had put into practice many years ago, but hey, that's how we grow and develop and go from there. So just provide some examples of, you know, again, when you're talking about 2 startup companies and then the one you built over an 8-year period, how those mindset shifts and how the intentions that you went into those, either the conversations or the business planning or presenting to the executive board, et cetera, how did that impact the outcomes of that? And you don't have to use just yourself, but other people that you've worked with as well.
Yeah. And I'll tell you, when I first started the organization that I ran for 8 years, oh my goodness, I did not have that knowledge, and every day was a new day. Like, think about stepping into a new job. It's like every day, it's like you're learning something new. Even though you have experience, you're still learning something new because you're facing something new in a new company every day. And it really started to paralyze me, because I'm sitting around a board table with all of these, you know, as CEOs and executives. And, you know, my first thought was, who am I? And what happened, though, is learning to shift your mindset. When I stepped into this other company, one of the companies I'm working with right now, and again, we're talking there will be massive results in this company as it grows. And I'm doing things that I've never done before, but I do it with a sense of calm and a sense of peace, you know. And when I see other people, a dear friend of mine, she's also done the work. She's now an owner of one of the training centers. You know, she also shifted. She made a decision the day I made the same time I made the decision that I was leaving the company that I was running. She made a decision to leave the company she'd been at for over 25 years. And did we get there overnight? No, there was a plan and a purpose. It took several years to actually make the whole thing work out. So if you have a plan and a purpose, don't get frustrated if it doesn't happen right away. And then, but she also set an intention. She said, I'm going to start my own coaching business. Now her business has morphed. She decided it wasn't just coaching. She's built an agency instead. And so now she's serving other businesses and other coaches. So that worked out for her, but she set that intention. She saw a vision. She saw her purpose. She knew it was bigger than what she was currently doing. And she was able to move into that. And so we talked through that because we were both in that same place of, you know, making a shift in our career. And these are big shifts. If you told me I'd be doing now what I was doing in January, I probably would have said, no, that's not where I'm going, because I thought I was going somewhere else. And yet it's exactly where I am supposed to be. So even if you hit a little detour, stay with it, because that detour is going to lead you to the path. I have a picture up here of, I framed it, and it's just a piece of paper, and I'm going to read it. So I'm looking up, it says, and it's a squiggly line that my toddler, my youngest son wrote. And it's just a squiggly line. And I wrote above it, this line below was drawn by my youngest son. It reminds me that life is not a straight, easy line, but seems to be very up and down, but we can all reach the same end. So know that whether you're, you know, regardless of where you are in your career, if you've lost a job, if you've just gotten a new job, if you're looking to start your own business, the line is never straight.
That's right.
It's never straight, but it will get you to where you want to go. Again, what I did when I was 18 years old, traveling cross country to join a theater company in California, all led to who I am today and how I'm able to create what I create today.
Well, you mentioned once that you were able to memorize full play parts in a day or two. And of course, that skill serves you today, even though it was many years ago.
Yeah. And your brain it's so fascinating that your brain can actually use, I may not be able to memorize scripts anymore. I don't know that I would even want to. And what it has allowed me to do is, when you're in that moment, I can think differently based on the experience that I had in the theater company. So everything that you have ever done, I don't care if somebody is a janitor, the skill set that they have is unique to them. They are unique to them, and they are valuable to the organization. So everything that you have done and created in your life is valuable of what you want to create in the future.
100%. And, you know, you talked about, and I know who you're speaking about related to, you know, leaving a corporate job for as many years as she was in it and starting an agency that then shifted very quickly so that she could meet her financial goals. And one of the things that I've heard her say about this is that she recognized that she had some other skill sets that she was not utilizing the first direction. So when she made the shift into the second direction, she was using more of those skills. She's very, very good technically and knows social media like up and down, and was very, very intuitive about it, and didn't recognize right away, but those were the skills that she should be using for her agency, which eventually, when she did, the business grew, and she now has, I don't know, staff of 12 or whatever it is. And she's doing very, very well. So I can
actually give a tool on how to do that. And I think this is valuable for every person, regardless of where you are in your career. If you're working and you want to move in a position, if you're not working and you want to get into position, if you want to move up the ladder, take a look. And again, it goes back to, if you haven't read Big Leap by Gay Hendricks, I invite you to do that. But look at what you are really, really good at. And one of the ways to do that is I coach people into making a list. making a list of everything that you've done in your life.
Mhm.
And it can go back to high school if you want it to, but
Mhm.
all of the things that you've done in your life, even being a mother and a caretaker at home and managing all of those things are value. And
Mhm.
so then write down what it is that you love. Did I love this? Did I not like this? There's 3 columns. Love it. I liked it. I am never doing that again, because there are a few in my list. I am never doing those things
Yes,
again.
right.
And when you narrow that down, you go back and say, what is my zone of genius? Like, what is it that just lights me up, that this is really what I want to be for the rest of my life or for this next season?
Mhm.
Then what are you excellent at? And then the third is, what are you competent at? And then what are you incompetent at? And that's
Right.
from the big leap. So
Mhm.
zone of genius, zone of excellence, zone of competence, zone of incompetence. When you write that down and you write that sheet down, you get some real clarity about where your strengths are, because at the end of the day, we get to enjoy the work that we do. I always invite, my children are all adults, and I'm like, do what you love. Don't
Mhm.
do what you feel like you have to do, because when you have to do something, you've just made it hard. When you get to do something, life is so much better.
Or you choose to, or you are blessed to. There's a
Yes.
whole, you can look at the same task and look at it as I have to do this, or I choose to do it, and it becomes a whole different mindset in terms of how you approach it. One of the other things that's coming up for me as we're having this conversation is related to not just what you've done professionally, but what you've done, let's just say, on a volunteer basis or avocationally, that has also added to your skill sets. And before I get to that, I mean, one of the things that I mentioned this earlier in one of the other sessions is that the principle of ikigai, or dharma, or purpose, is the intersection of 4 circles: what you're good at, what you enjoy doing, what you can get paid for, and what the world needs. And I use that all the time with clients. And you basically put another context around it: the genius, the excellence, the good at, and the not good at, or incompetent. And if you combine those two, then you're really gonna put yourself in a position to win. And
Mhm.
I'm just, I had not heard of this book before, but I will find it. The Big Leap is what you were just saying.
Yes.
So, speak to some of the things that you've done on a let's just say an unpaid basis, that have added to your skill set, and how can that impact the way somebody presents themselves, either in an interview or just in an open conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. So it actually will take me back to my Link days. So what Link does is we work with large employers, and as employers bring new people into the area,
Hmm.
we help them find community, we help them get situated, find resources. And if they have an accompanying partner who is also looking for a job, we had a partner career client manager that works with them directly. And we would often encourage them to step out and do volunteer jobs, because 1, you don't want that gap in your resume. And 2, I used to write resumes for people all the time, very long time ago,
Right.
but you don't want that gap in your resume. And it also allows you to continue to use your skill sets.
Hmm.
And so we would always encourage people here in this area. We actually have a center for volunteering, the Lehigh Valley Volunteer Center. So when you look at that, look at companies. There are so many. We have, now I don't know if this is true post-COVID, but pre-COVID, we had over 1,400 nonprofit organizations.
Oh, wow.
Nonprofits always are short on skill sets. They don't necessarily run as a business. They get to run as a business. If you have a skill set that can come in and help them, I'm on the board of a nonprofit now. It's a brand new nonprofit. Apparently, I only do new things because it's the build part of it.
That's good.
But it's a medical missions organization. They will get into humanitarian relief and our humanitarian aid and disaster relief. But
Okay.
as we're building out the organization, I've pulled together a marketing team of some people that are in my network and said, hey, can you help us build this? And so therefore, I'm stepping back into my marketing, because I was in marketing for over 35 years. So I still have that skill set, and there's things that I don't know because it's progressed and it's
Sure.
ever changing. So pulling those people in, but by doing the volunteer, again, I'm learning about different industries. My marketing company was always, I was not industry specific. I worked across many different industries. And here's the thing about your skill set. When you are really good at what you do, it doesn't matter what industry you're in. Industries like to think they're unique, and you have to be part of the health industry, or you have to be part of hydrogen or whatever, medical or whatever they're doing.
Or pharma is a big incestuous industry, because I worked in and out of it for many, many years, and they wouldn't let you in unless you had experience. And I'm like, well, wait a minute, isn't that why you're having difficulties? But anyway,
Right.
that's another story.
Yes, because you bring different thoughts to the table and different people to the table, and you're actually more profitable. The more diverse your staff and your employee base, the more profitable you are. And it doesn't mean just diversity. It can mean diversity in all areas. So, but we would always encourage people, but by working in nonprofits. So I worked for Junior Achievement. I've worked for, these other organizations, volunteering. I do a lot of, probably most of my volunteer is one-on-one, where I do help coaches and I do help small businesses.
Okay.
Not for pay. I just do it to support them and as a give back. Because again, you don't know what you don't know. And I feel like that's something that I can offer them. But it allows me to come from a place of, again, not doing the work, but just a place of, in giving, there's receiving. And it brings me a lot of joy to be able to support someone else. So, giving is also a huge part. If you want to talk about who you are, when you learn to give, other doors open. I'm a firm believer. The more you give, the more you get. And it expands your network. It expands what you're able to create and who you're able to network with. And that expands opportunities. So the more you're giving of yourself and your time, even though you may not be getting paid for it, you never know what's on the other side of, the table, and a person you may meet that's also working with the organization.
Yeah, and as you say this, earlier today were some comments about, when you're in transition, perfect time to volunteer at a local food bank. And a client of one of my other guests was looking to move from human resources into another arena. She wasn't totally sure of what that meant. And ultimately, she had some conversations with some executives that she met through the food bank organization, and became what she really wanted to be all along. And she didn't know that right away, but eventually that became clear: an executive assistant, where she was managing all the aspects of the executives, not just their calendars, but who'd be at meetings and when and why. And she had enough savvy related to the business that she could do all of that, but she never would have met any of these people if it hadn't been through a volunteer organization that she decided to give of her time without knowing what would come back. But I firm believer in what goes around comes around, in good ways and bad ways. And that's certainly a good example of that as well.
Well,
So,
and to your point, when you volunteer at a different organization or a different capacity, you're going to learn what you don't like to do as well.
Right.
So, it may open a door for something you love to do, and it may say, okay, yeah, that's really not what I thought it was. And I really do not want to do that. We had clients who actually took volunteer positions and then ended up getting a job within those organizations.
Ah, wow. Okay. All right, great. So, again, you've seen that firsthand. And we've covered several different, let's call them stories or examples of both yourself and other people that you've worked with or that in different circles. How would you summarize in a recommendation? And I'm going to frame this: somebody who's either in one of three places. They're either right out of school and they don't really know what they want to do. They have some academic credentials that they don't have enough work experience to evaluate what it is that would be worth it or not. That's kind of one. And these are all kind of close together, but different stages of life and career. Second one is, I've been working in this field for X number of years, supporting my family, doing what I thought I was supposed to do, and I just don't want to do it anymore. And then the third one is really can be part of the second one, which is, I'm working in an environment that is making me question whether I want to do this work anymore, although it may be more the environment or the boss that's the issue and not the actual, let's just say, the work itself. So, process for going through that exercise to get out on the other side, whether there's transition involved or not, in the healthiest place possible.
So if I hear you, you're asking what I would say the process would be to create that.
Right.
Well, I am going to go back to the exercise that I gave earlier, because
Right.
you really need to, even if you're coming out of college, you have enough life experience to know what you like to do and what you don't like to do. And second is go, and one of the things that I always say is talk to people, even executives will take the time to talk with you when you're not approaching them with an agenda. So here's a tip on LinkedIn. Don't friend request somebody just to get something out of them or to sell them something. That just drives me crazy. But if you reach out and say, hey, I'm looking to learn a little bit more about this industry, or, or your business, or, and would love to get your thoughts, or I'm looking to shift positions. Is there something that you can help me with? Again, leverage your network. People are your friends. Just because they're in a different position doesn't mean that they won't speak to you. It doesn't mean that they wouldn't, as I was switching industries, and I'm going to give this quick example, I had built such a network of executives running the company that I ran. And when I switched into that energy, I reached out to a retired CEO and I'm like, hey, Bill, do you have time to sit down and have a cup of coffee? He's like, sure, absolutely. And if you don't know somebody, ask the people around you. Ask the people around you to say, hey, do you know somebody that maybe is in this field? I'm thinking that I don't want to do this anymore, and I'm trying to figure out what would be the next, opportunity for me, given the skill sets that I have. So one, go back down to the list. Two, really figure out what it is that you love. The one thing that I did share with you is, the gift that I'm giving today is that mission statement. It's a shortened version. I actually, have a longer version, but do that work so you get real clear, especially if you've decided maybe this isn't what I want to be doing anymore. I mean, I did marketing for many, many years, and I decided I just don't enjoy it. Do I know it? Yes. Do I want to do it? No. And so I shifted gears, and I will say, be open to anything. Be open to anything, because you never know when that door is going to open. And it may not even be what you're looking for, but it's the exact place you're supposed to be.
The two things that you were just saying, and I use a similar approach, both in terms of exploring new options, and then once you've decided what you want to do, is to how to get your new credentials or your new positioning of yourself in front of as many of the right people as possible. It goes something like this. I've known you for a long time. I've always respected your opinion. I would love to get your advice on whatever it is. Would you have time for coffee? Which we can actually say now that COVID's pretty much behind us. But even a Zoom call, like we're doing right now, is an acceptable means. I'd love to get your advice, as opposed to, could you help me? Okay, because that has a whole different tone and manner of what it is. It's like, well, I don't have a life preserver, but I could advise you. In other words, when you use the word, I'd love to get your advice, you're putting the person somewhat on a pedestal because you respect what it is that they're going to be saying, whatever feedback they may have or whatever information they may have. And then, can you introduce me to other people that you would know who can expand on this conversation? Or if you're at a point where you're doing real outreach as far as networking is concerned, is just say, do you know people within this company, or do you happen to know who knows the CMO at XYZ company? And then we can have a conversation from there. And the word advice just has a lot of leverage to it for all the right reasons. And even on LinkedIn, if properly delivered, it will not turn the recipient off, much like, you want something from them or you want to sell them something. Like when you're asking for advice, it puts it in a whole different context. So, but
yeah, I like your word respect, because it does mean that you have this level of respect for them and what they're and who they are, and the position that they're in. And so, in being respectful of those people given that they're, probably very busy.
Mhm.
I've never, ever had anyone turn me down.
Yeah.
And people that I know that follow that path, it's same thing. Someone will always be there, take, 15 minutes, 30 minutes, whatever that is, and say, sure, how can I support you?
Exactly. And again, if it becomes a quid pro quo, is like, hey, I appreciate you taking the time to provide me advice on this. Is there anything I can help with what you're doing in your life? And
Mhm.
always recommend that anybody that I'm working with put that out there as well. And the answer may be no, but at least you've offered. At least you've said, hey, I value the time that you've invested in me to provide this advice. And is there anything else that I could do, that may help your situation, whatever way that means, and go from there. Yeah.
Yeah, we actually we have this with Link. We had this process that we used as part of the partner career, and they were networking meetings, and we made it very clear. And we had companies, some of the largest companies around that were involved with us.
Mm-hmm.
They just offered up. So we'd call, a company up the road and say, hey, we have this person coming in that's looking for this job. Is there somebody within that department that could speak with them? And just, 30-minute conversation. Now we had expectations already laid out. So this is what was expected by the interviewer and the interviewee, even though it was not a job interview, it was a networking opportunity. And we never had any of them. They were always so open. Because here's the thing for companies too, and other people, you may be going for advice, and then they may see something in you that would say, they actually called back probably 2 years later. We had sent somebody their way, and they wanted to hire this person, and they said, we don't have this position, but we want to keep you in mind because you're so talented in what he does.
Mm-hmm.
And then I was there earlier this spring, and the director of HR said, hey, is he still around? Is Tudor still around? And I'm like, he is, reach out, because I think he's still doing consulting work, but they had then a job. So you never know what's going to come out of those networking meetings when you go in, not expecting a job, not expecting anything else. But I had another client who, given her situation, I'm like, and it was a personal situation. I said, you won't be able to work a full-time job. This will stress you out. It'll put you over the edge. Mm-hmm. And I said, let's set you up to work in higher, because she could work both in higher ed and in industry. Mm-hmm. And I said, let's get some connections to higher ed. So we set up some meetings with local provosts. We have a lot of universities around here. And I set up a meeting with somebody, and she had tried on her own to get into at least 3 of these colleges as an adjunct faculty. And he reached out to his contacts, his counterparts at the other universities. She had conversations. She ended up getting, one of the jobs with one of the other universities. And then they ended up hiring her themselves a year or so later and making her a professor of practice. So networking is your key to getting a career.
Well, as you're saying,
or shifting careers.
Yeah, exactly. When we talked earlier about you don't know what you don't know. And in this case, you don't know who you don't know until you get out there and start putting yourself in front of people. And that's a really important thing as well. Any questions in the chat for Donna as we're getting close to wrap up time here? And going once. And I don't see any coming through. So if that's the case, I just want to say, Donna, I really appreciate you taking the time. How can people reach you?
I am on LinkedIn. You can reach me at Donna Cornelius. You can also reach me at hello@donnacornelius.com.
Hello.
And Cornelius is Cornelius. You can either think of Don Cornelius off of Soul Train, for any of you that are old enough for that, or Yukon Cornelius off of Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer.
One of my favorite characters. He couldn't find any silver, but he kept digging for it. So
yes.
Anyway, that whole show is my favorite Christmas. We're not going to let Rudolph play in any more reindeer games. Oh, never mind. I digress.
And look what Rudolph created when he realized who he was.
That's right.
yeah, it comes back to when you know who you are and what you're capable of, then you can lead the pack and fly the sleigh.
And don't put the little black cover thing over your bright
No,
red nose either. So,
do not cover up who you are. Don't
that's right.
ever cover up or apologize for who you are.
Yeah, Matthew 5, the light of the world, understood. So anyway, Donna, thank you very much. I'm going to turn off the recording. If you just stay on for a minute or two, there may be some people who want to interact either with you or not, and we'll just see what happens.
Sure.
And I will stop the recording here. And again, thanks.
My pleasure.